Allegation that President Trump asked former FBI Director James Comey to shut down the investigation into Michael Flynn, urging Comey to let this go. Democrats pounced.
The country is being tested in unprecedented ways.
Republicans troubled too, demanding the FBI turn over Comey's notes from that Oval Office meeting and testify to Congress, as the White House tries to defuse that other bombshell.
That we had actually a great meeting with the foreign minister.
Did the president share highly classified information with the Russians, compromise intelligence? Is the White House at a breaking point?
Also overnight, deadly tornado outbreak. At least 26 reported twisters ripping through the heartland, devastating neighborhoods, killing at least 2 and injuring dozens.
I would describe it as total destruction.
Tornadoes tearing through 100 homes in Oklahoma. This pickup spinning out of control on the highway. And now a new round of severe storms taking aim at the Midwest.
Live in Times Square, this is GMA with Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, and Michael Strahan.
Good morning, America. A very busy Wednesday. We'll get to those tornadoes in just a moment, but first, that report about the president and James Comey.
Robin, we have had a week of stunning stories from the White House. This is the most serious one yet. What we've learned in the last 24 hours means that the course of Trump's presidency will turn on his coming public showdown with James Comey. The big question, did President Trump try to block the FBI's Russia investigation, commit an impeachable offense? We now know that the FBI director made contemporaneous notes of his meetings with the president. That dinner in January, when the president reportedly asked Comey if he was under investigation, requested a pledge of personal loyalty. An Oval Office meeting in February, when the president, after asking his vice president and attorney general to leave the room, brought up the FBI investigation of his fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. I hope you can let this go, is what the notes say. Those 7 words could be Trump's smoking gun. Comey's notes, the modern equivalent of Nixon's tapes. Congress will get them. Comey will testify. Whether Trump holds the White House will depend on how Comey describes those notes, who Congress believes, how the country responds. Less than 4 months into the Trump presidency, we are watching, in the words of Republican Senator John McCain, a Watergate-sized crisis play out in real time. And this morning, our team is staked out across the Capitol with all the latest. Senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega starts us off. Good morning, Cecilia.
George, good morning to you. Another day, another bombshell here at the White House. This one has members of the president's own party sounding the alarms. This morning, the White House in crisis after another searing headline, this one accusing the president of trying to interfere with a federal investigation. ABC News confirming that shortly after an Oval Office visit in February, former FBI Director James Comey wrote a memo saying that during that meeting, President Trump asked him to shut down his investigation into National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. A source close to Comey tells ABC News that meeting happened the day after Flynn was fired, and that the president allegedly said of Flynn, "He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go." ABC has not seen the memo, first reported by the New York Times and described to reporters by sources who have seen it. It was allegedly part of a paper trail Comey left behind to document his meetings with the president. But the White House is pushing back, saying the president has never asked Mr. Comey or anyone else to end any investigation, adding, "This is not a truthful or accurate portrayal of the conversation." The reaction immediate, Democrats sounding the alarm.
I tell them they face the possibility of being charged with obstruction of justice.
Republicans like Senator John McCain reportedly saying the allegation before the president is, quote, of Watergate size and scale. Other members of the president's party also calling on Comey to testify.
I don't want to read a memo. I want to hear from him.
So you want him to testify publicly?
Yes.
Have you invited him?
I just did.
This explosive report breaking as the White House was deep in damage control on that other bombshell, the Oval Office meeting where the president is accused of sharing highly classified information with Russian diplomats, potentially jeopardizing a crucial intelligence source.
I wanted to make clear to everybody that the president in no way compromised any sources or methods in the course of this conversation.
National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster there delivering the latest line of defense for this White House. But you heard those Republicans there in that piece. All eyes on them this morning for their reaction to this latest fallout. The Republican House Oversight Committee chairman is now demanding that the FBI release to his committee, Robin, all documents related to these conversations between Comey and the president.
All right, Cecilia, we continue now with our senior justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, you have confirmed that Comey did indeed write this memo. What else are you learning this morning?
Robin, good morning. I confirmed this memo with a source who says he actually saw it and who vouches for James Comey's integrity. The source says that Comey documented Trump allegedly urging him to go easy on Flynn and that he did so more than once in the conversation. You just heard those quotes. Trump allegedly saying, "I hope you can let this go. I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He's a good guy. I hope you can let this go." According to the source, Comey noted that he only responded that Flynn was a good guy. Robin?
What else are you hearing from within the Bureau? What are FBI agents saying?
I've been struck at how many people have come to Comey's defense. I've heard directly from former agents who are livid at how he was fired and the way the White House has characterized his tenure. They flatly reject that Comey did not have the support of agents.
All right, Pierre, thank you. George?
Okay, thanks, Robin. We are joined now by the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, California Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman Schiff, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's go straight to the bottom line. Do you believe President Trump tried to block the FBI investigation?
Well, it certainly sounds, if these reports are accurate, that he wanted this investigation of Michael Flynn to stop, and he was concerned about the investigation in the sense that it might lead to him, based on his own admission and the conversation he claims to have had with Director Comey. The bottom line, though, George, is we don't really know what took place here, and we need to find out. We need to get those notes, if they exist, that Director Comey took of this conversation and any other that bear on this Russia investigation in any way. And, of course, if the president was making a truthful claim or threat to Director Comey that he had tapes, we're going to need to get those also. And I think it's only a matter of time, and probably not much time, before we see Director Comey come and testify before Congress again.
Are you prepared to subpoena those tapes, subpoena those notes?
I think Congress will need to subpoena them if indeed they're not provided voluntarily. I certainly support that. I think there are many committees that will. We've seen already Jason Chaffetz on the Government Reform Committee call for that information to be provided and threaten to subpoena it if necessary. So Congress really needs to get to the bottom of this. I think there are enough credible allegations now of an effort to potentially impede or obstruct the investigation that this needs a very serious investigation just on that issue.
Is there anything preventing Director Comey, former Director Comey, from coming to Congress right now?
Nothing at all. And I'm quite sure that's going to happen. I have to imagine that he will want to explain just what took place. If those conversations are as they were reported, the country really needs to know about it. If the president is affirmatively trying to interfere in this investigation, that's something that has to be brought out and investigated by Congress. And, of course, we have some powerful evidence, at least reportedly, in the form of contemporaneous notes taken by the director of the FBI. Those could be very powerful evidence.
And you've got a series of allegations. The January dinner, where reportedly the president asked for a loyalty pledge. That February meeting where the president reportedly said, "I hope you can let this go." Also, you have the firing of Director Comey, with the president saying that Russia was on his mind. What would it take for that pattern to be an impeachable offense?
Well, I tried an impeachment case a few years ago in the Senate involving a federal judge. It's obviously a very serious business, even involving a judge. When you talk about the President of the United States, that kind of wrenching experience to put the country through is only going to happen in the most serious of circumstances. There are, of course, the legal aspects of the issue. In fact, whether the president had the intent to corruptly interfere with the investigation. But then there's a very practical consideration, and at the end of the day, I think the practical consideration is this. Would the country believe that an effort to impeach the president was on the basis of a corrupt act by him, or that it was simply an act to nullify an election that people disagreed with? If it's the latter, it's never going to be successful. The country would have to have come to the point where they think the president's conduct is so disqualifying that he is rightfully removed from office. I don't think any of us should race to that conclusion. It would be enormously, obviously, jarring to the country to go through this. What we ought to be doing is methodically getting all the evidence and information to find out just what conversations took place, what did the president intend to do, and did he have an improper purpose in trying to stop the investigation altogether, stop the investigation as particular people like Flynn, and, in other words, protect himself from the administration of justice.
Congressman Schiff, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, George.
So what we're seeing, Robin, is that this is really just the beginning of the investigation.
And so many questions, and hopefully some answers here from our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, and chief White House correspondent, John Karl. Could this be obstruction of justice?
Sure, it could be. Can the legal definition be fit here as to attempting to influence an ongoing proceeding or investigation? Sure, but it's going to come down to what was the intent. Meaning, when he said, "I hope," was that just talk? Or was that a sort of a wink and a nod with an instruction as to what to do? Now, no question, this wasn't a good idea for President Trump, no matter what you think. And the fact that two of his key aides were instructed to leave the room right before he has this conversation, the vice president and the attorney general, doesn't help in trying to determine what the intent is. But most importantly, remember, look to the political. When we're talking about impeachment, it's not about the definition of the statute. It's about the fact that Fox News at 6 o'clock last night couldn't get a single Republican to come on to defend Donald Trump. That should be a bigger concern than the legal statute.
Because people want to know, what would it take for an indictment?
That's right. So for a sitting president, most believe impeachment is the way that you would prosecute someone. Could you later prosecute them criminally? Sure. But that the first step here would be an impeachment proceeding. And of course, that is a political proceeding. That's in front of the Congress and the Senate. So as we discuss this, I can't emphasize enough, look to the Republican senators and congressmen, congresspeople, because that's going to be much more important than legal experts defining the statute.
And let's bring in John Karl for more on that right now. John, Dan makes the point this is basically an impeachable offense, is whatever a majority in Congress decides is an impeachable offense. And we are now starting to see Republicans start to crack, or at minimum go silent.
Absolutely, and you're seeing some very key Republicans raise questions. The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Those are committees that would be investigating this. Those are committees that would be and are calling James Comey before to testify, threatening to subpoena that memo if possible. You saw that from Jason Chaffetz. It is clear that Republicans, at the very least, are nervous about what they are seeing, are demanding answers, and are in no way running to the microphones to defend their Republican president.
And John, we heard from Congressman Schiff there. I guess we're going to find out whether President Trump really has those tapes as well.
Absolutely. And the thing about this is it was President Trump that first invoked that. James Comey better hope there are no tapes of our conversation. It turns out that Comey himself had something very close to tapes, contemporaneous notes of those conversations.
Okay, John Karl, Dan Abrams, thanks very much.
And all this comes as fallout grows over that report that Trump shared, classified intelligence with Russian authorities. Now there are major concerns, major questions about whether that put the source's life at risk, and our chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross is here with reporting on that. Good morning, Brian.
Well, good morning, Robin. The president's disclosures to the Russians has stunned and outraged many in the counterterror world at a time ISIS is posing a very real threat to America. What's at risk this morning, according to current and former U.S. officials, is the life of a spy inside ISIS, placed there by Israel, providing sensitive information about plots against America on the condition the U.S. keep the source secret.
The real risk is not just this source, but future sources of information about plots against us.
The current intelligence from inside ISIS involves an active plot to bring down a passenger jet en route to the U.S., with a bomb hidden in a laptop that the U.S. believes can get through airport screening machines undetected. The information is so reliable that the U.S. is considering a ban on laptops on all flights from Europe to the U.S. ISIS has already taken credit for blowing up a Russian airliner 2 years ago, killing more than 200 people, claiming the bomb was hidden in a soft drink can. The White House National Security Advisor says that justifies President Trump's disclosures to the Russians.
This was the context of a conversation in which it was wholly appropriate to share what the threat was as a basis for common action and coordination.
But many in the counterterrorism community say what the president did was a mistake.
Russia is not part of the ISIS coalition. They are not our partner.
As well, Russia is known to trade information with countries that are hardly friendly to the U.S., including Iran, which is also a sworn enemy of Israel, Robin.
Keep that in mind. All right, Brian, thank you.
Okay, let's bring in our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz, right now. And Martha, reporting now that this information came from Israel. Of course, the president is heading there this weekend after stopping first in Saudi Arabia, and he's spoken with the Israeli prime minister as well.
Exactly, George. Our team in Israel confirmed that President Trump spoke to Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday following his call to King Abdullah of Jordan. And this morning, Israel's defense minister tweeted, "This relationship with the U.S. is unprecedented in its contribution to our strength." Israel's ambassador to the U.S. said Israel has confidence in the intelligence sharing relationship with the U.S. That, however, is the public face of this. But Israel would certainly fear that Russia would share intelligence with Iran, and Israeli intelligence officers have got to be taken aback by this. If one of their assets' lives is at risk, that puts other lives at risk, and I imagine that they will think twice about what they share in the future.
Yeah, they are putting up a good front right there, but this was a serious breach.
It really is, and it gives Benjamin Netanyahu an advantage when President Trump goes there. He may not talk about that, but it will hang over those meetings, and the turmoil President Trump is in right now does not help either, George.
Okay, Martha Raddatz, let's go over to Michael.
All right, thank you, George. We're going to change gears and now turn to those extreme storms that are slamming the heartland overnight. Tornadoes in Oklahoma and Wisconsin damaging more than 100 homes and forcing emergency rescues. ABC's Clayton Sandell is on the scene in Elk City, Oklahoma with more. Good morning, Clayton.
Hey, good morning, Michael. You can see this neighborhood is just absolutely devastated. First, take a look here. This is a big, heavy dumpster that came flying in from somewhere. And if you look at the garage of this home, every single wall has been pushed in here by this powerful tornado. And this is just one of more than 100 homes here severely damaged or destroyed.
This morning, severe weather havoc in the heartland.
Look at it.
Overnight, more than 25 reported tornadoes touching down from Texas to Wisconsin, one causing massive damage to this Oklahoma neighborhood. At least 50 homes destroyed, another 50 damaged.
She was moving, that's all I know.
Firefighters pulling victims from the wreckage, ripped off rooftops, flipped cars, and streets littered with debris. One person was killed. Treacherous conditions on the road making driving dangerous. One car seen here hydroplaning into oncoming traffic. And north of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, this trailer park devastated.
Trailer park looks like it might have been leveled.
Emergency crews rushing to the scene late Tuesday, working throughout the night to rescue people trapped in the rubble.
There is injury at this time.
It was at a time where a lot of people were home.
Officials say at least one person died, 25 injured, including a child.
There's a whole row where there should be trailers that there's nothing.
The destruction seen from above, the trailer court now just a field of debris.
I would describe it as total destruction.
High winds even hurling this trailer into the lake.
And the National Weather Service says they'll have a team here today to survey the damage and figure out just how powerful this tornado really was, Michael.
All right, thank you, Clayton. And we're going to go to Ginger. And Ginger, there's more severe weather today.
Unfortunately, there is, Michael. You can see that strong upward motion in videos like this from McLean, Texas. Thankfully, this type of rotation was over a field where no one lives. Unfortunately, today, that same storm is going to go ahead and rotate over most of Iowa. So Des Moines, Mason City, southwestern Wisconsin, you had the potential for tornadoes and large hail. Yesterday, we saw hail at 4 inches in diameter. It's not just today, it's tomorrow. And you can see that area, western Oklahoma, western Kansas, back in the threat region. The same storm, though, moves into the northeast. Look, just east of Cleveland, up through western New York. That's all on your Thursday. So much more coming up, but first, the hot cities, brought to you by CarMax.
Turns out things aren't always what you think they are. Take guinea pigs. They're not pigs at all, nor are they from Guinea. Or take this haircut. I may look all business, but look out! There's a party going on back here. Kind of misleading, isn't it? Well, at CarMax, you don't have to worry about being misled. The price online is the same price in the store, which is the same for everyone, even guinea pigs. It's only fair, Mr. Biscuits. Only fair.
Take a look at our feels like temperatures for today, soaring well into the 90s for the D.C. metro, even off to the south. We do have an air quality alert for today, so if you are in the sensitive groups, definitely want to avoid your time outdoors, not only tracking the heat, but also the humidity over the next couple of days. Temperature-wise, expecting to hit 90 today and also into Thursday. We could be breaking a few records over the next couple of days. 89 by Friday. We'll be falling cooler for the weekend.
Get storms with that type of power, you need heat, which we'll have here, and then snow on the back end. I'll show you who gets it.